Hello and welcome to the next thrilling instalment of Chat DPS. It's me, Nick Lovell, again, and I'm here with my friend Robert Feldman. And great to see you again, Robert, and thank you very much for coming on board.
Thanks, Nick.
This week we're going to be talking about three things particularly. There's this new cyber trust mark that's been introduced over in the US, which has got some interesting sort of bits to it, which we might pick through in a few minutes. We've also got the EU landing itself in hot water with the EU. A kind of interesting perspective on it, and you can't make this stuff up, right? I mean, it's kind of interesting how they get from we're gonna pick a fight on ourselves and just sort of like work it. And then there's this new report that's out by Falcon Feeds that's talking about. Well, it's fairly grim reading, really. I mean, if you start looking into the detail of it, I mean, exactly how many cyber attacks there have been, and over the last year in 2024, where they're prevalent and which industries are really sort of like getting caught out. So without any further ado, I guess this cyber trust mark that we've been looking at in the US, and it's really for Internet of Things devices, and it's aimed specifically with an intent to inform consumers that certain products and offerings meet certain government vetted cybersecurity standards, which on the face of it, fantastic. This is a really good idea. So this is being described as a trust mark, similar to what we see on washing machines for their energy consumption. So they get a star rating according to how the device is and whether it's actually worth doing the business. And the US government have been working with NIST. So NIST is obviously a very, very highly regarded and regulatory framework. So, one would hope that that's going to bring good things. The US federal government have apparently been talking to an organization called UL Solutions, and they've been invited to be the lead administrator on this particular scheme. And it's being left to major online companies like Amazon and Best Buy to do the education piece for the sort of for the consumer, which I find kind of amusing. I think that Amazon is up there with Facebook as being trustworthy in this regard. But anyway, we'll maybe we'll delve into that a little bit further. So they've suggested that the scheme will be active this year, which is quite quick in terms of getting it to market, and that federal government agencies will be required to procure devices with the cybermark by 2027. This is quite a big sort of announcement for an outgoing, sort of parliament, I guess. Any observations from your end, Matt?
Well, look, I mean, I think these things are always positive. The fact that they're going to put some sort of label on devices, and so whether we're talking about, I don't know, a smart fridge, a smart toaster, I guess from an Amazon point of view, the Alexa device, maybe there's an opportunity for Amazon to do a little bit of promotion on their Alexa device, that it comes with the cyber trust mark now, to give people a little bit more confidence about using
The
that device.
one-star rating.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess if boost consumer confidence, it's a positive thing. If the federal government is encouraging federal agencies to really procure these sorts of devices, as opposed to getting something from Temu instead. So I guess there's positives there in terms of protecting consumers. I guess, like with everything, yes, it's a positive step. You have to also question things like, well, okay, so there's going to be a standard. Not sure what that standard's going to be, and those standards are an audit of a device, of the systems that back that device at a point in time. And as you know, things change pretty quickly in cybersecurity. It's good that it's good that you can sort of say, well, that device has a certain baseline in terms of the standards it meets, but those standards can easily get out of date very quickly. So there's always a hint of caution with these sorts of things, but overall, I'd say a positive step forward.
Yeah, sort of. It's the thing for me is the fact that NIST have been heavily engaged in this process. I mean, that gives it, in my view,
Credibility.
a great deal of credibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
The hard bit comes with you sort of like saying, well, yeah, but okay, but Amazon are going to be telling the public how this all works, because I don't think Amazon are going to be the right organization to lead that.
Yeah, and here's a discount on Alexa. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing that sort of did strike me was: is this a step in the direction of protectionism? More protectionism in the US, maybe, or is that just the next government's
Yeah,
problem?
well, as I sort of touched on sort of lightheartedly, there'll be a favoritism for looking for these check marked devices, and you would probably think that something that you may buy off Temu probably won't go through this particular cyber trust mark standard. So I think there'll be some biases, some protectionism towards you would think North American or Western based produced devices, and so there's probably some element to that as well.
Yes, if you're a big hairy gorilla, then that's good for you. But if you're not a
Yeah,
big hairy gorilla, or you sit outside the tent, then you've got some other problems to deal with.
yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
that sort of covers that one. The next one made me smile. I mean, this is an amazing story. So the EU takes issue with itself over its own legislation and the way that it's actually implemented its own data protection laws. But I don't think you can make this up. What I liked about this was the fact that it's a very human story because I guess if you take it on face value, what the EU is actually saying is that they're not above the law, which to me was
Yeah.
actually quite a nice thing. So a
Hmm.
German citizen logged into an EU portal to do something,
It was a conference. He was joining a conference.
right, okay,
Yeah.
and so he's in sort of like which questionable whether it should have been available, I guess. So the error appears to be that the EU made Facebook a login an option,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
that's right.
this individual was then granted €400, which is about what 660 odd that dollars, I'm guessing Australian
Hmm.
dollars, compensation for being victim of a scheme that he logged into himself, made a choice of. So what's the moral of the story here? Is Facebook to log in, or is it don't use Facebook as an option?
Well, so this is all GDPR. Obviously, GDPR is considered the gold standard for privacy protections, and so there's a higher bar to how data is protected if you're dealing with any countries covered by that. And the view is that the US doesn't have the same protections. No surprise there. Just look at what's going on with Meta and similar organisations at the moment. So there's disparity there between the EU and the US. I mean, it'd be interesting to know the background to this German citizen, and were they just kind of trying it on? So they've selected Facebook login. Now, look, yeah, the lesson is the EU who was in charge of giving access to this conference shouldn't have had Facebook logging as an option in the first place. So there's the first lessons. Cut that out. But you have to kind of think: did this German citizen go, aha, Facebook login? I know a little bit about this. I'm going to take this to the European Court and take the EU Commission on. So it might be that he was being a little bit smart as well, and he's essentially exposed a loophole here, which I'm sure will be closed pretty swiftly. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the moral of the story: no one's above the law, it's good to see the separation of institutions, the separation of powers.
Yeah.
That the court would take the Commission to task over not adequately protecting data when there was that particular option.
Yeah, I mean, it's like physician heal thyself a little bit, but I mean, it's interesting how the ability for the EU to actually be humble, a little bit humble, hopefully,
Yeah, yeah.
and take the lessons on board and go, yeah, actually, this is actually a sack of shit. We need to do something different with it. Yeah.
But look, yeah, great headline, and generated lots of great memes as well.
Yeah, I can imagine it would have done. Yeah, and finally today we're going to talk about this Falcon Feeds report. Now then, this makes some rather distressing reading. The 2024 in numbers. So the numbers are quite frightening, actually. Australian organisations are being targeted more than once a day, every day. 500 cyber instances, with ransomware and DDoS attacks being the most prevalent. And I think the thing that sort of shocked me most here, I think, is the fact that if we still believe the sales numbers and we still understand what the vendors are actually telling us, sort of like very, very high percentages. I mean, we're talking 85, 90% of security budgets are being spent on firewalls and endpoint protection. And we're still not looking after data. So if ransomware is not being taken seriously here at all, and I'm guessing that's because there's no real compliance requirement at this moment in time. But we'll work through
That's
that
coming.
because
That's coming. Yeah.
Yeah. So compared to others in the rest of the world, then our ASEAN neighbours, that's ASEAN neighbours, faced almost 3,000 attacks, focused mainly on education and government sectors. 4,000 approximately 4,000 incidents were reported in India, again, education and government, but this time adding IT into the mix. Just over 3,500 were reported in the Middle East. This is in an area that includes Israel, by the way. So, that's kind of concerning. And of course, the mummy and daddy of them all, the US, with just shy of 6,000 cyber incidents, recording an 18.8% increase year on year. So here, ransomware and data breaches were the hot sectors, and those sectors are really manufacturing, technology, and healthcare. So this is a hard to read kind of sort of statements, or there's some hard to read statements in here anyway. What do we think about this, Robert? I mean, this is a pretty damning sort of thing. We're not taking care of our data.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'd say none of this is surprising. We've seen so much reporting over the last few years, in particular, in terms of cyber breaches, and it just keeps coming up and it keeps coming up, and behaviours are not changing. So you're right, people are not investing enough in security and securing their data, and that's just going to keep continuing. And I think what the numbers show is the trend is up, and it's getting even more intense. There's different vectors of attack. We're now seeing the use of generative AI to augment the abilities of these attacker groups. So it's just going to get worse and worse. So I think that's probably the overall summary, is the trend upwards. I think the other thing is also probably to say is that this is just the reported numbers, and there's probably another a lot of thousands of incidents which go unreported. So we're just dealing with reported numbers, and this is probably just the tip of the iceberg.
AI and quantum. So AI and quantum are going to make a massive difference to this. I mean, if you're not taking it seriously already, then you've now got to battle AI and quantum on top of that. This is where it gets really worrying. So in the US, they've got things like HIPAA, which looks after healthcare, is meant to be a data sort of protection regulation around health data, but they're still being targeted really quite strongly. What are we doing? I mean, what do we need to do more? I mean, we're trying to sort of like make people aware of the fact that there is a problem here. And even where it's regulated, people are, it's just, the villains are going at it, aren't they?
I mean, there needs to be greater accountability. So whether that's enforced through regulators and regulators taking these things more seriously, and hopefully we'll see something in the next few years. In Australia, if we think about some of the data breaches happening here, I think we talk about data being the crown jewel. So organisations need to take this seriously. They need to look at their risk. They need to be investing in data security. And it's like you say, it's not just about what's happening on the periphery. It's actually making sure that you're protecting your data in the best way, in the safest way.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that point, doesn't it? That, this is really the most valuable asset that you have in your business. It's the data. So yeah, okay. Well,
Absolutely.
not a happy thought, but anyway, one to end in on. So Robert, another great week's conversation. Thank you so much for participating and giving us that perspective on things. That was Chat DPS for this week, which was the 13th of January 2025. Time is passing so quickly. Thank you very much for joining us. Look forward to catching up with you in the not too distant future, Robert.
Thanks, Nick.